Almost every advanced chip on Earth, including the brains inside your iPhone, every NVIDIA AI processor, and the computer driving a Tesla, is built on one small island most Americans couldn't find on a map. And the factories that make them trace back to a tiny circle of Taiwanese families so powerful that the entire US military and the whole AI economy quietly depend on them. For 30 years, nobody could touch this empire. But then, in March 2026, Elon Musk walked onto a stage in Texas and declared war. So who actually controls the future? And can Musk really break them? Let's find out. Chapter 1. The island that owns your phone. Let me hit you with a fact that should genuinely keep you up at night. Right now, look at whatever device you're watching this on. The most advanced chip inside it, which is basically the thing that makes it think, was manufactured on the island of Taiwan. Not designed there, but manufactured. And it's not just your phone, it's the chips inside Apple's products, the insanely expensive NVIDIA processors powering the entire AI boom, the brains in Tesla's cars, and, brace yourself for this, a huge chunk of the hardware running the United States military's most advanced weapon systems. All of it, funneled through factories sitting on one island roughly the size of Maryland, 90 miles off the coast of China. Now here's why that should make your stomach drop a little. We're talking about a single point of failure for the entire modern world. If something happened to Taiwan tomorrow, a blockade, a conflict, a natural disaster, the supply of advanced chips to America would not slow down. It would stop. The AI economy, the defense industry, the smartphone in your pocket, all of it runs on a supply chain with one terrifyingly narrow neck. And sitting at that neck isn't a faceless corporation or a government. It's a small handful of Taiwanese families who built this empire so quietly that you've probably never heard a single one of their names. How does that even happen? How does a tiny island with no oil, no natural resources, and barely any history and technology end up holding the entire planet by the throat? The answer isn't luck, and it isn't free markets. It's one of the most calculated power plays in economic history. A deliberate bet made by a struggling government and one brilliant, ruthless man who didn't even like Taiwan when he got there. Let's rewind. Chapter 2. The $5 billion government bet nobody understood. Picture Taiwan in the late 1970s. It's not the tech titan we know today. It's a small, nervous island living in the permanent shadow of China, making its money the cheap way, manufacturing low-cost junk, the kind of stuff stamped "Made in Taiwan" that nobody thought twice about. The government knew this couldn't last. They needed to leap from cheap labor to high technology, and they needed to do it fast. Then a window cracked open. In 1986, the United States forced Japan's Toshiba to sign a brutal agreement that basically banned the company from developing advanced microchips for 20 years. Just like that, a giant competitor got benched. And two hungry players sprinted through the gap. South Korea, which built up Samsung, and Taiwan, which in 1987 created a company you may have heard whispered about, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. But here's the part the official story leaves out, and it's wild. TSMC was not some plucky startup. It was essentially a government project. The Taiwanese state put up almost half the starting money, about 48%, through a national development fund. And to grasp how massive a gamble that was, that single investment equaled around 0.165% of Taiwan's entire national economy. Imagine the US government betting that slice of the whole country's GDP on one unproven company. The rest of the cash got strong-armed out of Taiwan's wealthiest business dynasties, who were basically told to invest by the ruling administration. And the funny part? A lot of them had no clue what a semiconductor even was. One of the richest men in Taiwan threw in his money out of pure political obedience, and then dumped every single share on the very first day TSMC went public, because he thought the whole thing was nonsense. He had no idea he was walking away from one of the greatest fortunes of the century. So the state had the money and the factory. What it didn't have was the one man who actually knew how to build chips. And he was 8,000 miles away in Texas, and he wasn't sure he wanted the job. Speaking of the small, unglamorous thing everyone underestimates until it outsmarts the giants, that's what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 smart ring. It tracks your heart rate, your sleep, and your workouts straight from your finger, a week on a single charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The part that got us was the price. Under $40, a fraction of what the big-name rings cost, because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Because the man who finally saw it had spent his whole life failing his way to the top. Chapter 3. The Godfather Who Failed His Way to the Top. The man Taiwan needed was Morris Chang, and his backstory is the kind of thing that makes you rethink what failure even means. Chang was born in mainland China in 1931, into absolute chaos. War with Japan, then Civil War. By the time he was 18, this kid had lived in 6 different cities, switched schools 10 times, and survived fleeing actual air raids. That kind of upbringing builds a specific type of person, relentless, adaptable, impossible to rattle. He clawed his way to America, enrolled at Harvard as the only Chinese student among 1,100 classmates, then transferred to MIT for engineering. And here's my favorite detail. The supposed genius, the future godfather of the global chip industry, failed his MIT doctorate qualifying exam. Twice. It knocked him right out of the program and into a regular job in the private sector. And the choice that launched everything? Pure, gloriously petty math. He had an offer from Ford and an offer from a semiconductor company called Sylvania. He took Sylvania, not for the vision, not for the technology, but because they offered him $10 more per month. $10. That's the coin flip that aimed one of history's most consequential careers at the chip industry. He went on to spend 25 years at Texas Instruments mastering the brutal science of manufacturing chips at massive scale, the exact skill Taiwan was desperate for. So Taiwan recruited him, and Chang's big idea changed the world. Before him, chip companies both designed and built their own chips. Chang said, "What if we never design anything and only build? What if we become the world's most trusted neutral factory, a pure-play foundry, so that brilliant design companies like Apple and Nvidia could dream up a chip and just hand it to us to manufacture, with zero fear we'd ever steal their secrets?" That trust became the foundation of everything. But, and his critics get loud here, plenty of people in Taiwan argue Chang gets way too much credit. They point out he had zero connection to Taiwan before 1985, that he proudly kept showing off his American citizenship, and that he squeezed his engineers on pay while demanding a giant US-sized package for himself. Hero or hired administrator? Depends who you ask. Either way, while everyone was staring at TSMC and its famous factories, a second, far more secretive family was quietly locking down a different part of the chip world. And it might be the more important one. Chapter 4. The Secret Dynasty Hiding in the Back. Here's something almost nobody outside the industry understands. Making a chip isn't one step, it's 2. First, you fabricate the chip, the part TSMC is famous for. But then you have to package it, assemble it, test it, and wire it up so it can actually talk to the rest of the machine. And that back-end packaging step? For decades, it's been quietly dominated by one reclusive Taiwanese family that makes the Changs of TSMC look like publicity hounds. Meet the Chang brothers, Jason and Richard. No relation to Morris, just to keep things confusing. And get this, their empire didn't start in tech at all. It started in real estate. Their mother was a wildly successful property developer in post-war Taiwan, and in 1984, Jason convinced his mom to take the family's real estate fortune and pour it into the totally unfamiliar, brutally cyclical electronics business. They called the company ASE. And the way they built it is genuinely cold-blooded, in the best business sense. Every time the chip industry crashed into one of its regular downturns, when everyone else was panicking and cutting back, the Chang brothers went shopping. They snapped up struggling factories from giants like Motorola and NEC for cheap. Buy when there's blood in the streets. They turned a single plant with 200 employees into the undisputed king of chip packaging on Earth. And by 2026, that bet paid off in a way that's almost absurd. The AI boom sent demand for advanced packaging through the roof, and it roughly doubled the Chang brothers' fortune, making Jason Chang the single richest person in all of Singapore, worth over $14 billion. Now, full transparency, because this family's story has serious shadows. Back in 2001, Jason and his elderly mother were actually convicted and sentenced to prison over a financial scandal involving fraud and unauthorized land deals. And in 2013, one of their flagship plants got caught dumping toxic, nickel-laced wastewater straight into a river that irrigated local farms. Jason had to publicly apologize and pour millions into cleanup. So this is not a squeaky clean fairy tale. It's a ruthless, scandal-streaked dynasty that nonetheless ended up controlling a choke point the entire AI world now depends on. And speaking of that choke point, it's about to become the most important 3 letters in technology. Chapter 5. CoWoS, the 4 letters holding AI hostage. Okay, this is the part that ties the whole empire together, and once you get it, you'll understand why Taiwan's grip is so terrifyingly tight. Stay with me, because it's genuinely fascinating. Modern AI chips, or the NVIDIA monsters everyone's fighting over, have gotten so insanely complex that you literally cannot print them as one single piece of silicon anymore. Try, and you get catastrophic failures. So instead, chipmakers build them like the world's tiniest, most precise Lego set. Separate little chips, the logic, the memory, mounted side by side and wired together on an ultra-dense bridge, with wiring so fine it operates at a scale smaller than a single micron. The technology that does this magic assembly is TSMC's crown jewel, and it's called CoWoS. And the alignment is so precise that if it's off by a hair, the whole chip is just dead. Useless. Here's why that matters so much. CoWoS is the single biggest bottleneck in the entire global tech supply chain. There is not enough of it to go around, not even close. And NVIDIA, the most valuable company on the planet, has reserved the vast majority of TSMC's CoWoS capacity all the way through 2027. They locked it up, which led to one of the most jaw-dropping power moves you'll ever hear. Google, one of the richest companies in human history, was reportedly forced to slash its 2026 production of its own AI chips by 25%, cutting it from 4 million units down to 3 million, purely because it couldn't get enough packaging slots. When Google can't buy its way past your choke point, you don't have a business, you have a kingdom. And here's the kicker that exposes America's whole strategy as half-baked. The US government proudly threw $52 billion at building shiny new chip fabrication plants in Arizona. Great. Except those chips, once fabricated, still have to be shipped to East Asia to get packaged, because there's basically no advanced CoWoS level packaging on American soil. So a crisis in the Taiwan Strait would still freeze America's AI and weapons supply, even with those Arizona factories humming. That is the trap. That is the grip. And it's exactly the grip one man decided he was going to rip apart. Chapter 6. Enter Musk. The $25 billion declaration of war. March 21, 2026. Elon Musk walks onto a stage inside an old, defunct power plant in Austin, Texas, and drops what people are calling the most audacious announcement in the history of semiconductors. He calls it terafab. And the pitch is pure, uncut Musk. He stands up and basically says, the entire global chip industry, all of it combined, produces only about 2% of the chips my companies are going to need. 2%. So we're not going to wait in line behind NVIDIA and Apple for Taiwan's factories. We're going to build our own. The biggest, most ambitious chip facility ever conceived, designed to crank out 1 terawatt of AI computing power a year. His exact framing was blunt. We either build the terafab, or we don't have the chips, and we need the chips, so we build the terafab. It's a joint venture between Tesla, SpaceX, and his AI company xAI, and the headline number that ricocheted around the internet was $25 billion. Now, I have to be straight with you here, because the number is a moving target and it actually makes the story crazier. That $25 billion was the early figure. When the real filings came out, the first phase alone was pegged at $55 billion, with the full multi-phase build-out potentially reaching $119 billion. Let me say that again. This could become a $119 billion factory. And the audacity of the goal, At full tilt, this complex in Texas is designed to make 100 to 200 billion chips a year, sprawling across a site of up to 110 million square feet. That's not a factory. That's an industrial city built to manufacture the future. And the reason Musk needs that insane volume is the part that sounds like science fiction, except he's dead serious about it. Chapter 7. Chips in Space and an Army of Robots. So why does one man need more chips than the entire planet currently makes? Because Elon Musk isn't planning for the world we live in. He's planning for the one in his head. And it needs a staggering amount of silicon. Here's the breakdown that'll make your jaw drop. Musk has said that a full 80% of terafab's chip output isn't even for Earth, it's for space. The plan is to launch constellations of orbital satellites, little AI supercomputers floating in orbit, that do their computing up there, powered by the sun, beaming AI down to the planet. He genuinely believes that once the cost of getting to orbit drops far enough, it just makes more sense to put your data centers in space than to keep fighting people over building them on the ground. SpaceX even merged with his AI company xAI into one giant entity now valued at over $1 trillion, specifically to pull this off. Data centers. In orbit. That's where most of these chips are going. And the other 20%? That's the stuff that's almost more insane because it's coming sooner. It's for the Optimus humanoid robots, and Musk has talked about eventually producing billions of them, which alone would require something like 100 to 200 billion chips a year. Plus the brains for Tesla's self-driving cars and the cybercab robotaxis. So when critics say nobody needs that many chips, Musk's answer is essentially, you're not building a robot army and a fleet of space computers. I am. And the real genius of terafab isn't just the scale, it's the design. He wants to put every single step of chip making, design, fabrication, memory, packaging, testing, under one single roof in Texas. Remember how America's whole problem was that chips get fabbed in Arizona but have to fly to Asia for packaging? Musk's plan erases that entirely. Make the chip, test it, tweak it, package it, all in one building, never shipping a wafer across an ocean. If it works, it's the thing that finally breaks Taiwan's grip. If it works. And that's a massive if. Chapter 8. Can he actually pull it off? Here's where I have to pump the brakes, because as thrilling as this all sounds, the experts looking at terafab are split between visionary masterstroke and this is physically impossible. And honestly, both camps have a point. Start with the money. Musk floated $25 billion. The filings say $55 to $119 billion. But one major research firm ran the numbers on actually hitting that 1 terawatt dream and estimated the true cost could balloon towards something in the trillions. A number so large it'd rival a huge chunk of the entire US federal budget. No company's cash flow survives that alone. Then there's the lithography problem, which is almost poetic. To make the most advanced chips, you need these god-tier machines called EUV lithography systems. And they're made by exactly one company on Earth, a Dutch firm called ASML. Each machine costs up to $350 million, takes years to build, and here's the punchline. ASML's entire production is already fully booked by TSMC, Samsung, and Intel through 2027. So to escape one choke point, Musk has to squeeze through another one. There's also the small matter that terafab has no memory chip plan of its own yet, and that Musk's companies just bled talent. All 11 original co-founders of his AI company, xAI, walked out the door by 2026. Building the future is hard when your team keeps quitting, but, and this is why you can't ever fully bet against the guy, the partner he picked is the masterstroke. To actually build these chips, terafab teamed up with Intel, the fallen American giant that's clawing its way back under a sharp new CEO. For Intel, desperate to prove its factories matter again, landing Tesla and SpaceX as customers was a lifeline so big its stock had its best month ever on the news. And here's the thing about Musk. SpaceX was supposed to be impossible. Tesla was supposed to be impossible. Analysts have been wrong about him over and over. So is terafab a genuine dagger aimed at the heart of Taiwan's 30-year empire, or a $100 billion fantasy that collapses under its own ambition? Nobody honestly knows yet. But here's the thought I'll leave you with. and it's the real point of this whole story. Even if Terafab never produces a single working chip, just existing as a credible threat changes the game. It hands Musk leverage to demand better prices and priority from Taiwan that he never had before. For 30 years, those quiet Taiwanese families had something close to absolute power, because the world had no other option. Now, for the first time, there's a guy in Texas building an alternative the size of a city. The dynasty that nobody could touch finally has a challenger crazy enough and rich enough to try. And whichever way this goes, the chips that run your entire life are about to be the most fought-over objects on the planet. If stories about the hidden empires and the titans battling to control the future are what brought you here, subscribe to Global Status, and we'll keep delivering them. See you in the next one.